Hello, I'm Dr. Richard Burchill, the Director of Research and Engagement at Trends Research and Advisory here in Abu Dhabi. I'm joined today by Dr. David Roberts from the Department of Defence Studies, King's College London. We've been here today for the Future Security of the GCC annual event, where we've been discussing the changing character of modern war. In particular, we've been looking at the impact that non-state actors are having on how we understand and how we go about conducting modern war. Now, David, you raised a very good point about how states will purposely support non-state actors for their strategic interests. And I wonder if you could just elaborate on that for us a bit more.
Indeed, I mean, thanks for the invitation. It's always good to come back to the Gulf to have these sorts of chats. There are a variety of factors, obviously, as to why states engage with non-state actors. Sometimes there are domestic political pressures in their own state, yet they still want to exert a certain influence somewhere. Maybe that plays into it. States can't always, maybe they don't have the resources. Maybe they don't have the human capacity. Whatever the reason is, the idea is you could, of course, if you can support a non-state actor in a different conflict, it could be a way to expand your influence. Maybe it's about wider sort of regional legitimacy, giving you a dog in the fight, as we sort of say, back home, something along those lines. But needless to say, it's a fraught tactic. It's a difficult tactic to pursue.
And we see, and there's a lot of discussion today about this point, when states are actively supporting and giving material support to a non-state actor that is involved in a conflict that has no legitimate basis, what does that do for the supporting state in terms of their responsibility under the UN Charter for maintaining international peace and security?
It's a matter of perspective, isn't it, in terms of legitimacy? This is the fundamental difficulty that we have. I mean, we might agree that an intervention via a non-state actor in one particular conflict is perfectly legitimate, is perfectly sensible, is defending the rights and values that we seek to uphold. But whether that's we, with some Gulf allies, or we just in the West, or we just as Britain, or whoever it is, we don't monopolize, legitimacy. We don't monopolize the truth. And our perspective we need to grasp is, we think it's right because it's ours, by definition. But we don't monopolize that sort of legitimacy, if you see what I mean. So the recourse to it's illegal, it's about your fight's not legitimate. It leads down a cul-de-sac eventually.
Now, if I could just ask you, in relation to the presentation we heard today, when states are sponsoring non-state actors, and as you just said earlier, you want a bit of a dog in the fight, as it were, are we seeing states make more use of non-state actors because they don't want to be actively engaged in a conflict or some sort of movement? Is it essentially, are they putting up proxies because they don't want to pay the cost?
Well, there's a couple of things here. I mean, historically, as we were learning today, the idea of the non-state actor is absolutely by no means new. In fact, if we want to go on a larger historical timeline, maybe it's the norm, to be honest, who knows. But either which way, there's been a certain movement in the 20th century to more or less ban international conflict. It's become, we don't have ministries of war anymore, we have ministries of defense, which speaks to the change in, what states can do. So if states can't declare war, I mean, I don't even know the last time when Britain declared war. Pretty sure it's the Second World War, if you see what I mean. But nevertheless, states want to exert their influence, they want to support their allies, and therefore you need to find a way to do that. And whether it's supporting non-state actors overtly or covertly, this is one of the methods. It's sort of human nature squeezing through the cracks of international law.
And if I can just take that point, if this is becoming part of almost statecraft now, looking at the bigger picture, what does this mean for ongoing concerns about international peace and security? So if we're not having states engage in conflict, we're starting to see states use non-state actors. What's the future look like?
Yeah, this is of course the key question, the key difficulty. I mean, the empirical research tells us that civil wars where there are lots of different factions as opposed to a united bloc, as you'd expect. But the research is quite clear that without this united front of some description, then the conflict goes on longer and is more bloody. And this is something of a feature of the utilization, if you will, of non-state actors, that it can be quite hard to unite the states that want to project the power. So each state may, and has, and Syria is quite a grim example of this, pursue their own sort of, follow their own actors, support their own actors, which fractures the conflict. So that's one key ramification. And we've had some interesting chat by Professor Theo Farrell today about the implications on international law of this. Now, this is going out with my purview, but he was saying some fascinating things. I'm sure you've got these noted down about, you know, humanitarian law and international law focuses on states. Of course it does. But it's about making these rights and privileges and duties more widely applicable.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything today, we did discover that some of the legal frameworks we have are not that suitable. They don't quite address the issue. But it's also interesting how some of the strategic frameworks as well are proving quite complicated. David, thank you very much for your time, and it was very good to hear you speak today, and thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, thank you.